Hey everyone, thanks for joining. This is Ben with Curate. Wanted to introduce some new faces, but thank you first for hopping on, talking about a little bit of the SEO and making sure we get that secret recipe to increasing the bookings and increase that are coming in. Obviously right now with the nature of the business that we're in with COVID and things like that, we're preparing for that bounce back. There's a lot of conversation around opening up certain areas, and we just want to make sure that everyone's prepared really for that influx that could come in for your area specifically when that does happen. So preparing for bounce back series. This is our second one, really increasing those inquiries and making sure we know the recipe to do that. So to do that, we wanted to bring Sara in, and we'll do some introductions, but just a few housekeeping items. We do have the ability to do some chat too in here. So as you are coming in, feel free to put where you're chatting from. We're out of St. Louis, Missouri, and Farrah and I are both out of St. Louis. Farrah is our CMO at Curate. And then Sara, not to be confused with Farrah, is our SEO guru that's joining us today. So anyone that's in here, go ahead and put in the Q&A where you're coming from. And as you have questions as well, you can raise your hand through the Q&A portal, or you can even put them in chat too. We can answer some quick questions that way, or we'll even do questions on the back end too after the webinar. First couple little bit will be the dialogue between Farrah and Sara, and then last probably 10-15 minutes will be some questions and open-ended pieces like that. So with that being said, I'm going to hop out and go kind of take a back seat and kind of help out with some things on the back end. But with that, I'll go ahead and introduce Farrah and let her take it from there.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I've been working in digital marketing for, wow, I would say probably like the past 10 years of my career. And so one really important aspect of that is being found by your clients. And SEO is a huge part in that. And so today we have Sara Dunn with us, and she works with wedding professionals on SEO. And interesting fact, I found her because I was doing a search on SEO within the wedding industry. So I found her blog about it, and she seemed like a perfect guest to bring on to talk about this topic. So welcome, Sara.
Well, thank you so much, Farrah. And I have to say, that's always my favorite thing when someone says to me, I found you on Google, because that means I'm doing my job and showing you that I can do my job. So that's a big deal. I really appreciate it.
No problem. So Sara, tell us a little bit about how you got into the business of SEO, specifically within the wedding industry.
Well, it was kind of a long and winding path, and I'm going to guess that a lot of your professionals got to their businesses in kind of a winding path too. So I actually became an accidental web designer in about 2012. Just a friend of mine needed a website, and I said, that sounds like a really fun thing for me to figure out and help you with. So I helped one friend with a website. That friend told someone else. And eventually I was making so many websites that I realized I could actually do it as a business. So in the end of 2012, I started a web agency, and I ran that for about 6 years, just doing general web design for anybody that I possibly could. And while doing that, I recognized the fact that while I was making someone a website, it was very important for that business owner, if they invested in their website, for that website to actually be found. So a couple years into me making websites, people were like, so is this helping me on Google? And I kind of just said, I'm not really sure. So that's when I decided to teach myself search engine optimization. In about 4 years, I went super deep into training and discovered that that's really where my real passion lies. So once I started working with wedding industry professionals, it was absolutely my favorite, and I wanted to do it every single day. And that's when SaraDoesSEO.com was born, and this whole business that is entirely focused around the wedding industry and helping wedding professionals get found on Google.
No, that's great. So why do you think SEO is so important, and specifically for wedding professionals?
So here's the thing about SEO. I know anyone listening, anyone that saw this come through the Curate feed was probably like, oh, SEO, it's so hard, it's so technical. But the thing is that we all use Google, and your couples also use Google. when they are searching for vendors, when they're searching for information, when they don't even know what they need and they're going online trying to figure it out. And so it's so important for us to show up as business owners as that authoritative voice, the person who can answer the questions for the client, the person who is positioned to be the well-known expert in the field. And a lot of times I like to compare that the effort that we all put into social media to the effort that we put into SEO. So when I'm talking to wedding professionals, we all spend so much time on Instagram. Farrah, do you spend some time on Instagram?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of time on Instagram.
Absolutely. And we're told that we need to write interesting captions and write engaging posts. And I know when I go to write an Instagram post, I can spend 30, 40 minutes trying to write the right thing and really make it helpful and engaging. And then when I put it up, it might get a lot of engagement, a lot of comments for maybe a day, maybe 2 days. Now compare that if you spend some time creating really good blog content on your website. You might put a few hours into crafting a really helpful post, but that effort can pay off for you for years into the future. So imagine instead of having to show up on Instagram tomorrow and again come up with something fabulous and interesting, you've put a lot of time and attention into one post, and it keeps bringing you visitors and bookings and inquiries for years. That's the power of SEO and why I think it is so important.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I also see SEO as just very much an investment, right? You may not see it immediately, but that long-term effect of it and just the compounding effect of it is definitely there. So in your experience, what's been the impact to some of your clients that have worked on their SEO?
So this is super fun for me. I love my client success stories and when they share them with me. I was thinking in particular about one of my wedding planner clients this morning, and I went and checked on a blog post that she wrote about 6 months ago. And that post took a little bit of time to build up traction on Google, but it has brought her over 600 visitors to her site since that time. And of course, it took her a lot of time to start with. She had to optimize it well and be patient for Google to find it. But now it continues to bring her visitors every single month. And these aren't just random visitors from around the country or the world. The topic of the blog post was very locally focused. So most of those visitors come in and they're in Michigan looking for help planning a wedding. So that's just one success story of writing blog content specifically. I also have another client in a bigger city, and we got her website to rank for a certain keyword that she wanted. And now about 70% of her inquiries come from Google traffic. So it can be such a magical thing, especially if you're watching your rankings and your inquiries over time and seeing the impact of that.
So what are some common misconceptions about SEO you've seen?
There's so many, and I have to acknowledge there's so much information on the internet about SEO, and not all of it is good. Some of it is a little bit of like spammy, corner cutting tactics that I don't recommend, and some of it's just old. So things that used to work 10 years ago may not be things that I recommend today. So common misconceptions are that for SEO, you have to learn 20 different things, which is not true. We're going to talk in a little bit about a couple things that I recommend that wedding pros do that are very simple. So it's not crazy, technical, and overwhelming. You don't have to learn a whole new vocabulary. You just have to boil it down into a few simple steps. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions, that it's overwhelming and very technical and that creative people can't do it.
Great. Because I do think people are intimidated by the topic, but I think you can start very simply and just realizing that there's going to be a huge impact from what you do, and it doesn't have to be this thing that, like you said, is not for creative people. So what is the number one thing, a florist or caterer can do to make sure they can be found online?
All right, so I put some thoughts together on this topic, and I really think the number one thing you can do is find a keyword that people are actually searching for, and then make sure to use it on your website. So I'd love to do a little bit of workshop with your participants, if that works for you, Farrah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's great.
Because I want to talk about how this actually works. I think a lot of times if you go to an SEO webinar or read an article, it's very like high level, and you don't really get into how do I actually do it. So I want you to see how simple it is, and talk about those two steps. So finding the right keyword and using it on your homepage. So I put together a little, just very short presentation. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and share that with everyone who's watching. Okay, so I want to talk about just some SEO basics today because I promised you that it wasn't crazy hard, and I promised you could do it. So before we get too far, I really want to explain what SEO means, and then we're going to talk about exactly how to do it, how to do SEO today and start and do something really impactful. So anyone watching, feel free to have your website up in one window and my face up in the other, and you can follow along with me. All right, real quick. With search engine optimization, all we're trying to do is influence the search engine results to get your website on them. So we're not talking today about paying Google money for advertising. That's totally different. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I love is the game of getting on Google for free just by having the best content and the best optimized website. So what I'm going to teach you today is about how to get free exposure on Google for your website and your content. And what's important to recognize is that Google isn't looking for all sorts of technical little tweaks to your website. Google's really just looking for the best and most helpful result for their searchers, because Google really wants people to be happy with the results that they're delivered. That's what makes you come back to Google the next time you have something that you want to find. So how do we convince Google that we are the best and most helpful result for a certain search? That's all we need to do, I promise. So if you feel like this about SEO, you are probably making SEO too hard in your head. We're gonna break it down. And I had to put the little French bulldog in my presentation because I have a Frenchie, so I just had to sneak one in there. Okay, so today all we're doing is good marketing. We're not getting technical. We're not looking at the code of your website. We're just doing good marketing of your brand and your website, and that's also going to make Google love your site. We're going to provide clear, helpful content. We're going to keep visitors engaged, and we're going to make sure you promote your website on other platforms. So the number one thing to get found on Google, this is our Curate workshop for today, is choosing a good keyword and using it on your website's home page. Number one, everyone always loves when I suggest a really good free tool that you can use. So the one that I always recommend to my students is called Ubersuggest. I don't get paid a dime for saying their name over and over again. It's just the best free tool that's available. And a lot of SEO tools are very expensive. So this is really a gift. I love Ubersuggest. And let me show you a couple things about Ubersuggest and what I want you to use it for today. So I've got it up on my screen. And if you want to also access Ubersuggest, just Google Ubersuggest and click on it. You'll end up here on Neil Patel's website. So he's the owner of this tool. And you can sign up for a free account using your Google account and get access to a little bit more data. So that's what I'm modeling here. I just have a free account with this tool, just like you could have. And here on the screen is a place where we can type in a keyword idea and find out a little bit more about that keyword. So if you're not sure what a keyword is, all I'm talking about is the exact phrase someone might type into Google when they're looking for what you do. And I know a lot of florists may be on this webinar, so we're going to use some floral examples today. So a lot of clients come to me and they'll say something like, I want to show up on Google when someone's typing in Charleston wedding florist. So great. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to Ubersuggest and we're going to type that in. And then I'm going to search for it. Oh, and I spelled it wrong, so that's not helpful. Interestingly, I'm not seeing, oh, here we go. Let me refresh, there we go. Okay, so this data that we want to see, we're getting some information about the keyword. And what I find a lot of times is that people aren't quite sure what keywords that their couples might actually be searching for, especially because we're so deep in our own businesses and our own industries that it can be confusing. And we start thinking that people are searching much more specific things than they actually are. So I had a participant in my last boot camp who said, I want to be found when someone types in boho event florals in San Diego. And so we went into the tool and we typed this in and it said 0 search volume. So I said, go more general, try something else and find a keyword idea that actually has search volume. Let's look at this one. By search volume, you see the search volume is 50, and that means the number of searches that are done for this phrase every single month in the US. So I've selected the US as my target. So 50 times a month, people are searching for Charleston wedding florist. Now this gives us a little more data, ignore most of it, though the SEO difficulty is an interesting measure if you want to figure out, is this hard or easy to rank for? They call 25 easy in Ubersuggest. It's still a little tricky, but if you look at a few different ideas, you'll get a feel for which one's the easiest by comparing the SEO difficulty numbers. So 50 searches a month. Is this good? Well, let's look at the other keyword ideas that Ubersuggest feels are related. Charleston wedding florist gets 50 searches a month. But look at this. Who knew? Wedding florist in Charleston, SC for South Carolina, that actually gets searched 20 more times a month. So if I optimized my website for Charleston wedding florist, I might get less exposure than if I optimized for wedding florist in Charleston, South Carolina. So this tool gives us really good information about what keyword ideas might be the best ones for us. And I always recommend writing a few of these ideas down, write down their search volume, so you start getting a list of options and you can compare them. Which one gets searched the most? Which one seems to be the easiest to rank for? The other thing, people tend to often type in wedding flowers. So let me see, I'm gonna go back to the top. So when I'm doing keyword research for a client, I try out lots of different variations and just see what sticks. Charleston wedding flowers, only 20 searches a month. What if I write it slightly differently? Still 20 searches a month. So I think that the best option for a wedding florist that's in Charleston would be that 70 searches a month keyword, which was wedding florist in Charleston, SC. Let me run through my example where you might be thinking of something too narrow. Now, I knew that something like this would work just because I look at a lot of wedding websites. If you've never done this before, you might go in and say, boho event florist. Something real general, or something a little bit more specific, I mean. Let's see if anyone searches for that. Nope, I'm seeing a big line, which generally means 0, volume 0. So you would know, even if you ranked #1 for this keyword, no one's searching for it. So it's not gonna have any business impact for you, very little traffic. So on my list, if I was the Charleston wedding florist, I would circle this keyword here. Okay, so that's step #1, finding a keyword that has some search volume and is very specific to your business and probably where you want to do work. So most of the time as wedding vendors, we need to think about a location, a local area within that keyword, and make sure that we're getting in front of couples who are actually in our area who might be willing to hire us. So once you've selected wedding florist in Charleston, South Carolina, your job in doing SEO is just to go use that exact phrase on the homepage of your website. So that's step 2. Optimizing your homepage. You've chosen your most important keyword, and now you're gonna just use it in 3 places on your homepage. The first one is in your homepage content. So this is actually the written content on your homepage. Find a way to work in wedding florist in Charleston, South Carolina into the text on the page. That's usually really easy if you're willing to use a sentence like, "We are wedding florists in Charleston, SC," or "I am a wedding florist in Charleston." That kind of sentence is you doing SEO because you're purposefully using a keyword phrase that you want to show up for. Then, if you know how to do this with your website platform, I would love to see you put that keyword in your SEO title for the page and in the meta description. So let me show you a little bit of what that means. Wedding florist. So your SEO title for your page is what shows up in the big letters that's linked on Google. So you want to make sure that yours says wedding florist in Charleston, SC, so it is more likely to get clicked on. And you'll see that that's a pretty common thing to have in the title of these sites that are ranking near the top. So I want to make sure you include that. So if I worked with, look, Palmetto Bloom does a good job, not a client, but they must have thought through this already. So they put Palmetto Bloom, which is their brand name, and wedding florist in Charleston, SC right here in the title. So that's great SEO. I also love how they've written this, and this is called your meta description or SEO description for the page. And they've made sure to put a keyword phrase right there in the meta description. So that really helps that person who is scrolling through these results, looking for a vendor. They're like, okay, this person is what I'm looking for. They do wedding and event florals. They do it florals, candles, decor for weddings. They also do rehearsal dinners and special events. So this is a really nice meta description, and I'm so thankful Palmetto Bloom happened to be here to give us a good description to look at. So those are the 3 pages or 3 places I recommend using the keyword phrase that you chose in step 1. And just those little tweaks can have such an impact. So I did this exact process for a client of mine who is an event planner. And just from making those tweaks, her site jumped up 3 pages in the rankings for the keyword we were working on. So this is very important to Google and helps to clarify what your business is and what you do. So that's all SEO is thinking about what the searcher's looking for and delivering it to them. And at the basic level, that was my workshop for you today to keep it really short and simple. There's certainly a lot more things you can do to show up better, but this is where I want anyone to start if they've never done search engine optimization before, because it's pretty simple to think about your business in this way. What do you think, Farrah? Any questions?
No, that's great. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? You can type it into the Q&A or into the chat. Sarah's with us, and so she can answer any specific questions you may have.
So while we're here, I think that there are some other pieces that people have usually heard about that they've heard are good for search engine optimization. So I want to touch on those as well. Blogging is one of them. I mentioned it at the beginning of the presentation that blogging can be very helpful. And there's a couple reasons for this. Blogging can add more content to your website. So it can make your site overall higher quality because you have more helpful information that keeps people on the site longer. And it can also bring in searchers who are searching for the information that you're sharing. So like my example of my wedding planner client who's gotten all of those clicks to her blog post, she's just answering a question that people commonly have about weddings in Michigan. And they are landing on her website, reading that information and meeting her as the expert. So you're increasing the quality of your website and bringing in searchers who need the information you're sharing. So blogging is definitely something that I recommend for my clients and for any wedding professionals who want to get found on Google.
Great. And I think we had a question come in about if this recording will be available after, and it is being recorded, and we will be sharing the contents of this after this presentation, as well as some really cool, like I think Sarah has a really cool resource as well to share, right?
Yes, and I think it actually goes along with Holly's question that I see in the chat. How do I know what's working with my SEO strategy? So I have a video I'm going to share with you guys that's all about tracking your rankings using Ubersuggest. And I can actually show you a little bit more in depth what this looks like. So again, my favorite tool, we can use this to set up what they call a project. And I have a few examples set up here. Not necessarily clients, but just people who wanted me to check out something on their website. So I'm going to take a look here at Starling Studio. I created a project for her site, and in it, you can use a piece that's called position tracking. And all this does is allows you to put in a few keywords you'd like to show up for. So Tessa is a wedding photographer in Columbus, Ohio. So there's a few keywords she wants to show up for. And we just entered these right into the Ubersuggest project. And then over time, Ubersuggest actually tracks where she's ranking on Google for those keywords. So that's the position column here. So position on Google just means where are you? And each spot is counted as a position. So positions 1 through 10 are generally the first page of Google, 11 through 20 are the second page, and so on. So Tessa knows at a glance that the work that she's done to rank for Columbus wedding photographer has gotten her on to the second page of Google. And that's an improvement from where she was about 3 months ago when we first set this up, so that she knows her SEO strategy is working because this number keeps going down. We want to see the number go down because the closer you are to the number 1, that means the closer you are to the top of the search results. So this is my favorite way to know if your SEO strategy is working. A lot of times professionals will just go to Google and Google their keywords and try to kind of scan through the results and see where their website shows up. And that's tedious. That's a lot of work. It's also hard to remember where you were last time you did it unless you're really good at keeping records. So you're probably going to do that process. You'll be like, okay, I'm on page 2. I don't remember if that's better than last time. I don't know, I give up. So it's just another one of those things that can feel like a lot of work. So I like to let the tool do the work and actually show the progress over time. And if you click on the little graph, it's not doing it for me right now for some reason. There is actually a metric of where it shows you your change over time and kind of a line. So you can see, is it going up? Is it going down? So it's just a really nice visual way to see how you're tracking in your SEO strategy for those keywords you care about.
No, that's awesome. So some other questions that I'm seeing, how many keywords should I be targeting on a given page?
Great question. I love that. My best advice is to target 1 keyword phrase per page, which can sound kind of crazy because you're like, well, if I don't put all the keywords I want on my homepage, how am I going to get found? But it's important to remember that Google is looking for the 1 page online that is the best result for a certain keyword phrase. So I like to optimize separate pages for separate keywords because then you can put that keyword right in your SEO title, like I talked about before. So you might optimize your homepage for Wedding Florist in Charleston, South Carolina, and you might optimize your photo gallery page for Wedding Flowers in South Carolina. So when you find different keyword phrases that work, you just need to decide where are you going to use that, what page makes sense as a result for that search. Now, when things are really similar though, like this, Columbus wedding photographers, plural, versus wedding photographer, singular, I would say just target those on the same page and choose which one makes more sense. So Tessa is a one-person wedding photography team. So throughout her homepage, we've used the phrase photographer, singular. And that she's also going to have that page show up for the plural version because they're so close. Does that answer the question, Farrah?
Yeah, I think so. So another question that came in was, should I optimize my homepage or the page where I'm trying to get people to convert on?
I like that question. Here's the thing. We have to imagine that when someone's coming to your website, this is the first experience they're having with your brand, with your company. So bringing them in from Google for a search for wedding flowers in Charleston, they've probably never heard of you before. And it's going to be really hard for you to get them to convert right on that first page that they land on. They need to do a little bit of building some trust before they will probably inquire with you. You're probably going to ask them to inquire with you. That's what we do as wedding professionals. So it's not just like sign up for my free guide or something that's like a really small conversion. You're asking them for all the information about their wedding, their fiance, their name, their wedding date. So just bringing someone into a page that you want them to convert on and expecting them to fill out the form is a big step. And generally, I actually don't optimize contact or inquire pages because I expect that people aren't going to land on those from Google and fill them out. They're going to land on your home page, your services page, or a blog post. And then they'll explore your site from there. And hopefully your website is leading them to the page where they're going to convert. So that's a little bit of deeper marketing strategy, but generally that's what works for me. I don't optimize the contact page on my website for wedding SEO. I optimize the homepage. I guide people to helpful content. And then at the bottom of every page, it says, get my welcome and pricing guide. So it's not asking them to go too far too soon.
Perfect. Then you talked a lot about search volume. How many searches a month is good for a keyword that I'm trying to target?
Yeah, such a good question. And unfortunately, that question has everyone's least favorite answer, which is it depends. Different areas just have different search volume. And with search volume usually comes more competition. So even though there's like 1,200 searches a month for Chicago wedding planner, there's also a zillion people competing for the first page. So you might be like, oh, I want to optimize for Chicago wedding planner because 1,200 people a month are searching for it. But if you can't get to the first page for that phrase, it might be worthwhile to go after a keyword that's easier to rank for, that has a smaller search volume, because you might actually be bringing in more couples. So what if Chicago Indian wedding planner only gets searched 50 times a month? The tendency is like, oh, that's a throwaway then. I'm going to go after the keyword that's 1,200 a month. But if you're great at Indian weddings and that's what you want to plan, I would go after the lower search volume keyword all day long because it's probably also less competitive. There's fewer people optimizing for that as a specialty. So that's just one example of where there isn't necessarily a good search volume. It's thinking about what can you realistically rank for and what is best going to serve your business. I live in Battle Creek, Michigan, which is a very small town in Southwest Michigan. So there may only be 10 searches a month for something like Battle Creek wedding photographer, but there also aren't a lot of photographers. So I would have a page on my website optimized for that phrase, even though it's a very small city, because it's going to be easy for me to rank really high. And I know those people are very close to me and more likely to book than someone who's further away in one of the bigger cities. So there isn't a right answer to what's a good monthly search volume.
Thank you, Sarah. I had another question come in about blogging. So you talked about blogging, but how often should someone be blogging and how long should those blogs be?
Oh, yes. Here's the hard thing about searching online for SEO advice is it's not wedding specific. So if you go into Google right now and type in, how long should a blog post be for SEO? It's probably going to tell you over 2,000 words, which is a lot of writing. If you've ever written what you felt like was a lot and then did a word count, it was probably like 300. So trying to get to 2,000, you'd be like, I'm not doing SEO, I give up. But the good news about the wedding industry is you're not competing with other people that are writing really, really long articles. So when I recommend to clients that they blog, I say try to get to 500 words. At a minimum, make sure there's 300. But the right length really depends on the length of what you're competing with on Google. So you probably don't have to write 2,000 words, but if it's a really competitive topic, you might have to write a little bit more. But 500, it tends to be what I recommend for wedding clients. So that's the length of the post in word count. Other question was how often? And again, that's kind of a comparative question. So how often are your competitors blogging that rank on the first page of Google? I want you to blog more than they do. But most of the time, in most places, for most vendors, blogging once a month would be a great accomplishment and would get you out there creating more content than most other people that do what you do. So I know I only blog once a month and that seems to work fine. So I recommend hitting that goal of once a month. And if that becomes easy for you, maybe aim for every other week. But most of the time, I know wedding vendors are busy and that's not realistic. So once a month is my guideline.
And then kind of related to that topic, what should event professionals like florists and caterers be blogging about that would attract the right kind of clients?
Yes, so there is a lot of potential things. And what I like to recommend is that everyone keep a note on your phone, I do this, of questions you get all the time. So there are probably questions that your prospective clients are asking you as they're considering hiring you. And then there's probably questions that your current clients are asking you even after they've hired you. So when you get that feeling of, oh, I've been asked this question 20 times, that's probably a good moment to say, hey, I should probably sit down and write a blog post that answers that question. And it has the dual benefit of being great for Google. And also you now have a link that you can just send to people rather than rewrite the answer in an email every single time. So question answering is my favorite way to find blog post topics. And truly, you can just write the question as the title of the blog post and write the answer as the content. This is something that I did on one of my most popular blog posts on my blog because someone asked me, hey, what should I name my images for SEO purposes? And I was like, what a great question. Let me write up an answer for you. So my most popular post on my own blog is, what should I name my images for SEO? And the question is the title, and then the answer is just the content of the post. So that's a really easy formula for blog post content, question and answer. You guys probably know those questions even better than I do. But something you can do is go into Ubersuggest, and I'm going to go back to the keyword research section. So imagine that you go in here and you're kind of just looking for local searches. Charleston weddings. This is something that I really like to do for content ideas. Is just type in a really general keyword and see what's suggested. Oh, there we go. See what's suggested, shouldn't have clicked, under the keyword ideas section. So this might give you some ideas for some things you could write about. What about writing about venues for weddings? It seems like, oh, that's not exactly related to what I do, but you probably have some favorite venues you've worked with that are really your style, that attract the right type of couple. And it would be great to write a roundup post all about your favorite Charleston venues for weddings. So, and that is also a great opportunity for you to show off your own work at those places. So these are things that people are searching for that are local to you. And so this can have a lot of value in bringing in those searchers, the couples that are actually nearby who are looking for their vendors, making their own wedding decisions, and working on that right now. This works really well for planners too, if you have any planners on the call. Answering questions that are local about planning a wedding, especially destination, things like what's the best month for weddings in Charleston? Those types of very early planning questions can get people in before they've made all their vendor decisions. So there's a whole world of keyword ideas.
Awesome. Those are really great tips. I think a lot of times it's tricky on blogs because you just don't know what's the best topic to blog about. I mean, you're staring at a blank page, but that gives us lots of great options.
I love keeping a content calendar. So like a running list of blog post ideas. So when I sit down to write, I don't have to start with, okay, what am I even going to write about? I have a topic that's assigned, that's the next thing on my list to write about. So I get to sit down and just start with my outline rather than wasting brain power on, I don't even know what to say. So that can be really helpful, is just have that running list of things that you've decided you will write about in the future, and you can pick from that list and keep moving.
Now, if someone, I know there's a lot, if you're searching online about SEO, there's a lot of talk about backlinks. What do you think, how does that play into an SEO strategy, and what's something that is not too overwhelming for someone in the event industry to be able to think about how to get backlinks?
Yes. So let's define backlinks. Backlinks are links to your website from other websites on the internet. So Curate is going to say, hey, Sarah's doing a webinar. They might link to my website. And that would be a backlink for me. So a link from Curate's site to mine. Similarly, backlinks to an event professional site might be, here's this wedding you worked on and it got published on a local wedding blog, and they link to you in the vendor list. So these are very important to Google because it shows Google that you exist outside of your own website and that other people on the internet trust you enough to link to you as a resource. And at the very beginning of Google, backlinks didn't matter. They weren't a thing. You could put up a website today, throw a bunch of keywords on it, and Google would be like, okay, great. Here's a website with lots of keywords on it. We're going to rank it. The problem was a lot of the people that did that were very spammy websites. And Google said there needs to be a way that our robots can actually decide which businesses are credible, which businesses are trusted by others. And they said, let's make backlinks a big part of who ranks the highest on Google. So they are very important to get some links to your site to show your authority in your local area, show that other vendors have worked with you. So I definitely recommend backlinks as part of your strategy, especially once your website's a little bit optimized. So you followed the steps that we talked about earlier to choose keywords and use them. Then moving on to backlinks. There's a lot of different ways to get them, and sometimes you just have to be creative. Styled shoots, of course, are a good way, especially if everyone who's involved in leading that agrees that they're going to blog that styled shoot and make sure to link to all of the vendors included. That can be a great way to get 3 or 4 great backlinks from local vendors because everybody's blogging the information and sharing that on their websites. Of course, it's very helpful to get published. I know sometimes florists especially, you don't have a lot of control over that. The photographer and the planner really need to be the one that are leading getting published. But anything you can do to make their lives easier so that they can submit that, maybe giving them a summary of the florals that were used, helping them describe that so that they have some text that they can submit if they're planning to submit a wedding for publication. Any way you can facilitate and make it easier, it's a huge benefit to you if you worked on a wedding that gets published in an online blog, whether that blog is huge like Style Me Pretty or just smaller and local. Both of those things are really important. So anything you can do to get published is good. A lot of times I've also seen, especially people getting started, they will do like a spotlight with a friend, another vendor that they know. So I'll write a spotlight about you on my website if you'll write a spotlight about me on yours. And you can kind of both get a new backlink and a little more exposure in that way. So those are just a few ideas that you could use.
No, those are all super helpful. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you again so much, Sarah,
Of course,
for joining us. Oh, sorry, I saw another question. What's okay, I think this question says, what's an easy way, an easy audit I can do to know where the gaps are?
Oh, website audit?
Yeah.
Yeah. This tool does a really good one. It's under the projects. If you use Ubersuggest and set up a project, it gets a little overwhelming because it's going to tell you a lot of different issues your website might have. So you have to kind of pick through it a little bit and be like, okay, that seems like something I can fix. That seems too technical. I'm going to ignore it. But just remember, any small progress that you can make is important for your search engine visibility. So don't get too overwhelmed if there's a long list in something like a site audit tool. I do want to show this to you if Ubersuggest will let me load it. Because if you set up the project, it's going to show you the site audit. So that's a little link at the bottom of this project, and it says overall site health. And it's going to show you some errors, some warnings. It can also show you some other keywords that your site ranks for right now. So if someone asking about gaps was talking about like, what keywords could I rank for that I haven't thought of? This might tell me I reached my limit. Come on, Ubersuggest. They must have changed limits because I used to be able to do all of this for free without getting so many pop-ups. So this might be a multi-day process if you're on the free tool. But when you go here and you have some limits, this will actually list for you the keywords that your site ranks for already. And one of my favorite things to do is look for those keywords where you rank like number 50. That means you're pretty much on the 5th page of Google. And you might be able to tweak your website just slightly to use those keywords better and see yourself rise up a couple pages, 3 pages in the rankings and really start to get clicks for that. So one of the biggest gaps are those keywords you rank for, but not high enough to actually get clicks. And those might be good things that you could work on.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate all the very actionable tips that you've given us, and so specific to the people on like our audience at Curate, because I think that's one of those tricky parts that you alluded to is there's a lot of general advice out there around SEO, and sometimes it's not super relevant, and or it you know, you try to take the advice and it doesn't work out and you don't know why because it's just kind of general advice. But thank you so much for making it very actionable. I'm going to turn it back over to Ben to close us out.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. The insight that you shared is just incredible. I even learned some good things in there too. And I think it's so important to realize that even if you're a florist, a wedding planner, a caterer, even like we have some caterers too, I think it's important to look at those metrics and the different things to make sure we are doing more than just organically growing sometimes, especially with the landscape that we're in right now, about being more competitive after we're out of COVID. I think it's super important. Obviously, Curate is a software that helps automate the systems and processes of florists, caterers, event planners. But when it comes to the stuff before that, before the event even starts, you got to get them in the door, and the inquiries is such a huge portion. So we love partnering with people like you. Sara does SEO.com if you want to learn more information about Sara and what she's doing. She's incredible wedding SEO consultant, helps planners, photographers, venues, florists. I'll do a plug for her right now because she's really knowledgeable, incredible, especially in this space. In addition to that upcoming workshop that she has like a boot camp coming up May 11th through the 14th. It's a wedding SEO boot camp. You can go to her website to learn a little bit more information on that. So we'll want to make sure we check that out. Everyone check that out if you want to learn a little bit more about SEO and what you can do. And we'll share that link too in the chats as well. But Sara, we really appreciate you joining with us. And this webinar will be available for replay. So if you haven't registered yet for it, most people that are on here probably have registered, so you'll get a recording of that, but we'll also give that to people moving forward to that register. So Sara, thank you for joining. Farrah, thank you as well for the dialogue, and thank you everyone for joining and asking great questions. We'll see you next time, next week at 11 o'clock Central Time. Next Wednesday is going to be Let's Get Social, talking a little bit about social media. Obviously, search is important with SEO, but then also balancing that too with some organic from Instagram, Facebook, things like that. We're going to be with Mayesh and Sue at Fresh Design Floral. So join for that one a week from today. We'll send that invite out. But everyone be safe. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll go from there.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.